Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be revealing the Spring Cup team that helped me become one of the first trainers in the world to reach veteran rank this season of Go Battle League. Now the team is as follows: Hisuian Electrode as the lead, Tentacruel as the save switch, and Empoleon as the closer. I went 16-4 on stream with this team to climb to 2562 elo, and the team just felt absolutely incredible. I got this team from Jocko Loco, who used the team to hit veteran himself, and he mentioned that the team was originally created by Alucon TV. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1 we pick up a very nice lead, Hisuian Electrode into Tentacruel. Now I'm able to significantly outpace the Tentacruel, but if I stay in the matchup for too long, I'm going to take a lot of acid damage. So I farm up to the Wild Charge, bait with the Swift, and after getting shield advantage, I'm more than happy to switch my Tentacruel into the mirror. This team functions with Tentacruel as the save switch, because Tentacruel doesn't really have any hard answers in this meta. Even something like Jellicent, which used to shut down Tentacruel, no longer does because Tentacruel has access to Payback. Payback inflicts devastating damage onto that Jellicent. Jellicent, they're forced to fire off energy I could have made the Scald. I'm very okay just taking my shield advantage, because now I can go for massive farm with Hisuian Electrode. I did unfortunately get one turn brain lag there, which means I didn't get my Thundershock sneak. And that actually allows my opponent to preserve the Jellicent on 1 HP and reveal their final Pokemon as Klefki. Unfortunately, Klefki does not like Wild Charges. Wild Charge connects, that's huge damage out of the Klefki. They lose 3/4 of their health bar in a split second, and now I can just bring in Empoleon and go for the farm down. If they do survive 6 Metal Sounds, which they barely do, then I can just CMP tie them with the Empoleon. The switch timers are misaligned. However, I'm feeling pretty confident about winning this game because I still have a bunch of energy stored on the Electrode. I shield up the Empoleon, my opponent takes advantage of the desync of the timers, and they bring in the Tentacruel. Unfortunately for the Tentacruel, I can fire off the Drill Peck to burn my Switch Clock, and then go for the combo play with the Wild Charge. Wild Charge is going to be knocking out the Tentacruel. All they have left in the back is 2 1 HP Pokemon, so my opponent will resign the match. We move to game number 2, picking up a pretty nice lead once again for Hisuian Electrode, this time leading into Hisuian Samurott. Hisuian Samurott is an incredibly cool pick. It has access to Sacred Sword, which is going to be able to spam out every 9 turns. However, Electrode gets to Swift in only 8 turns, so I do have an ever so slight pacing advantage. I bait with the Swift, get the shield, farm up, bank the Wild Charge, and get the catch and sneak onto the Tentacruel. This is big because I'm able to preserve energy on the Electrode, and Electrode energy is pretty universally strong no matter what your opponent has on their team. I'm more than happy to let this go, probably an icy win, but no, they're actually on Dark Pulse. That Dark Pulse did a ton of damage to my Tentacruel. They send in Empoleon just to get hit with the Payback, and it looks like they might have been able to farm down. It would have been very, very close, but they decide against it. They don't want to risk me making the Scald, so they'll just fire off energy. I considered bringing in Electrode into the Empoleon, but at this point, I need to cover for a potential Jellicent in the back. If I throw away the Electrode and then there's Jellicent in the back, I can't win this game. However, if I save the energy on Electrode, even if it's Jellicent, Electrode should be able to sweep. I build up to the back-to-back Hydro Cannons, knock out their Empoleon. Now what are they going to do? Are they going to bring in the third? No, they bring in Samurott. I do not want Samurott to make a Sacred Sword, so I'm going to throw 2 and then fire off the Drill Peck. Down goes the Samurott. In the back is a Moongus. That is not the Jellicent that I was expecting to see. However, I have enough energy on this Empoleon that I should barely make the back-to-back Drill Pecks. The first gets shielded, but they don't have a Protect shield remaining, which means this second Drill Peck will be the game winner. That's going to get a Moongus very low. Back in comes the Electrode, and now I can take the knockout with Wild Charge. Wild Charge may be resisted, but it takes down a Moongus and secures us the win. We move to game number 3, and what a cool lead from my opponent, Hisuian Electrode into Grimmsnarl. Now this is not a matchup you would ever see in the Open Great League, and it's part of what makes these limited time metas pretty cool. I build it to the Wild Charge, bait with the Swift, and that is a stone cold bait call from my opponent. They no shield, I switch into the Tentacruel, catching the Power Up Punch bait, and my opponent now sends in a Spark Lantern. I'm very happy to bait out the Spark Lantern because Empoleon would get absolutely destroyed, but Tentacruel can fight back. Tentacruel lands the Payback, that deals some pretty significant damage onto the Lantern, and I think considering that Spark Lantern is so slow to get the charge attacks, I'm actually going to be investing shields into the Tentacruel. And here my opponent actually plays to the CMP tie, and this is perfect. Whether they shield or not, I'm pretty happy. They end up letting it go, and they have their own Tentacruel in the back. I'm going to farm up to the Payback and bait with the Scald, hoping for a shield and hoping for a potential debuff. The Scald does not get the debuff. My opponent tries for the farm down. I make the Payback, but I click the Scald. I was expecting my opponent to go for the catch, and that might cost me because they no-shielded. I could have got huge Payback damage, but I over-anticipated, and unfortunately that could come back to bite me. Now their Tentacruel is quite healthy. I shield up the payback, in comes the Grimmsnarl, and I respond with the Empoleon. Unfortunately, Empoleon's gonna have to take some pretty significant damage here. Grimmsnarl boosts up with the power-up punch. I get the farm down, but I take quite a lot of damage along the way. Back in comes the Tentacruel. The good news is Tentacruel is getting pretty close to Drillpeck range, so they're going to have to respect this. Drillpeck does get the shield, they fire off energy, they're going to need a payback. A Scald will not knock out, and by throwing the payback, they now don't have the energy to outpace the Electrode. So back in comes the Electrode, we make the Wild Charge. A bit of a misplay there in the mid-game to not just throw the payback, but the good news is we do get the win. We get the Dream Lead in the next match, Hisuian Electrode into Lantern. My opponent save switches into a Grimmsnarl, and honestly, a Grimmsnarl save switch stun-locked me a little bit. I have two very good answers in the back that I could have sent in, but instead, I fire off the Swift just to a little bit get my bearings and then bring in the Tentacruel. Tentacruel, not going to be too worried about a foul play. I will get a very nice farm down, but I think banking the energy and then going into the Tenta would have been a little bit better. I'm still in a very good spot because as the Lantern tries to farm down, they're going to take some pretty significant damage from this Tentacruel. I'm able to make the payback, and look at this, I'm able to hang on with 1 HP and make a Scald as well. So they do exit with quite a lot of energy, but what is that energy going to do to Electrode? To my surprise, they actually throw a move. I'm very happy taking a Surf on the Electrode. In the back, it's a Dartrix, and unfortunately for this poor Dartrix, there is just absolutely no play for this Mon against my backline. Tentacruel hits it for big, super effective damage. Empoleon tanks Seed Bombs like it's nothing. They would need a pretty massive energy or shield advantage to win this game, and unfortunately, they have neither. So I should be in a very good spot. I'm a little worried about trying to Thundershock it down though, so I do decide to put up 1 shield and just fully Metal Sound them down. They've already lost so much HP on the Lantern that even a Hydro Cannon can probably threaten a KO at this point. So I fire off the Hydro, it does KO the Lantern, and that's going to be another win. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty terrible lead, Hisuian Electrode into Gorggeist. I have absolutely no play here, so I throw 1 Thundershock and then defer the Incinerate onto the Tentacruel. My opponent responds to the Tentacruel save switch with Empoleon, and this is going to be a tricky game. Tentacruel does have some pretty solid play into the Empoleon, but if my opponent plays it right, I don't think I'm going to be able to force a shield advantage without a Scald debuff. So I go for the Scald, I don't get the debuff, I farm up, and my opponent makes a critical error. They should have overfarmed to the max and CMP tied Drillpeck to a payback because it would have KO'd. But by not doing so, I now survive on 1 HP to make the payback and force a shield advantage from my opponent. That is very, very good for me. Now I can bring in the Electrode, and I'm very happy to absorb damage on the Electrode because I know that I can't really do much of anything against the Gorggeist. Drillpeck lands, we do tank that pretty comfortably, and I'm hoping that I've done enough Thundershock damage that I can actually take the knockout with the Swift. Swift does take the KO, back in comes the Gorggeist, I transfer the Incinerate once again, in the back is Togekiss, and the shield advantage plus energy advantage Empoleon is going to win this game. Togekiss fires off the Aura Sphere, but I have 2 shields to hide behind. I can even overfarm 1 past the back-to-back Hydros, and there's just no way out for my opponent. By overfarming 1 over the double up, I've now put myself in a spot where I can throw 2 in the move and 2 in the move, and always get my charge stacks on good timing. My opponent tries to go for good timing, and that's going to cost them as I'm able to make this Drillpeck. This Drillpeck will force the shield, and now I can go for the CMP sack swap with the Hisuian Electrode, catching the Shadow Ball, knocking them out with the Wild Charge, and that is a good game. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty okay lead, Hisuian Electrode into Shadow Galarian Weezing. Even though I have 2 much better answers in the back, the threat of a Wild Charge is so oppressive that I can stay in, force a shield advantage, and then try and go for the Sludge catch. Unfortunately, my opponent does not let me go for the catch, but they still end up firing off energy. That works for me. Weezing goes for the Overheat, so they must be so core broken, and now we learn that they are as they bring Greninja into a Tentacruel. Even though Greninja is actually walling off Tentacruel's energy, I mean, is it really though? Look at that damage. That damage was just absolutely laughable. Poor Greninja taking huge resisted damage. I can make a Scald unless they throw energy, so they're forced to throw another Night Slash, and now I can just take an energy head start on the Electrode. So I snipe down with the Thundershock, my opponent sends back in the Galarian Weezing, and I'm up a shield, so I'm very comfortable shielding and looking to overfarm. Weezing fires off the Sludge, I farm up to the back-to-back Wild Charges, and it looks like that was a charge stack priority tie. As long as I can ensure that I have a little bit of residual energy, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to outpace whatever my opponent has in the back. And if they're shielding, they're probably weak to Electrode. So I look to farm up some residual energy, take the knockout with the Wild Charge, and be only 2 off the move. In the back, They have a Seaking, and this game is over. This poor Seaking getting absolutely one-shot by Wild Charge, and Hisuian Electrode just absolutely took over that game. We get a great lead in the next match, Hisuian Electrode into Feraligatr. My opponent safe switches into Galarian Weezing, and I stay in to fire off a Swift Bait. Now this is a bit of a greedy play by me. Arguably what I should have done was just sent in the Tentacruel right away, because Tentacruel is such a hard wall to Galarian Weezing. Had my opponent no shielded and called the Swift Bait, staying in would have actually been a very, very negative part to this game, and could have actually put me at a disadvantage. But because they shielded, it ends up working out, but I wanted to point it out because I don't think that was the most optimal play. I think even banking the energy and going Tentacruel would have been better. My opponent sends back in the Feraligatr, but if they're going to try and farm down, they're going to take huge damage from Payback. Payback is going to land. Feraligatr now very low. I pivot into Electrode, and my opponent in the back has one of the only Pokemon that Hisuian Electrode struggles against, and that is going to be a Shadow Victreebel. Shadow Victreebel able to grab the shield. I'm just farming up to the back-to-back Wild Charges because I know that even though this is resisted, it's a Shadow Victreebel. It is incredibly, incredibly glassy. First Wild Charge got big damage, second Wild Charge gets the shield. I'm pretty confident they can't farm down the Tentacruel, so I bring in the Tentacruel, force their energy, and then I can win the game with Empoleon, because my opponent simply does not have enough energy on the Feraligatr to win the game. I have a shield, I have a full HP Empoleon, and my opponent is going to resign the match. We pick up a pretty nice lead in the next match, Hisuian Electrode into Seaking. I'm able to output big super effective damage, I overfarm, and this is where I learned that Electrode loses charge attack priority to Seaking. I had never faced a Seaking on the lead with this team prior to this game, so I didn't really know who won CMP, so I overfarmed to test it, and it turns out that's not a CMP tie that I win. Even though I'm debuffed, I'm still absorbing this peck damage pretty well. My opponent makes a very nice catch onto Amoonguss. Even though my defense is at -4, I want to have a Wild Charge banked for later, so I stay in, take huge damage to do so, but I'm pretty confident that that is going to be the right play. Having a Wild Charge loaded puts insane pressure on their final shield. Amoonguss lands the foul play. I CMP tie Drill Peck to their foul play number 2, hoping that it will knock out. And it does. Drill Peck takes the knockout, down goes Amoonguss. My opponent sends back in the Seaking, and now I have a pretty difficult choice to make. I decide to put up the final shield here. I want to try and pressure them into giving me the shield back or losing the Seaking, but my opponent makes yet another catch as they catch the Drill Peck onto Klefki. My opponent is playing this game incredibly well. Unfortunately, they are in a very, very tough bind just because my alignment is so favorable. I send in Tentacruel, my opponent will fire off the foul play, and it looks like I will actually get the perfect farm down with Tenta. Foul play is going to land. I need 5 acids to KO, and they do perfectly KO. That is quite literally the best farm down that I could ever ask for, and now I can just spam out Scalds. My opponent no shields, realizing there's not really a path forward in this game because the Hisuian Electrode has that Wild Charge banked. Drill Run knocks out the Tentacruel, but I can send in the Electrode, get the Thunder Shock down, and even though my opponent arguably outplayed me, we're able to get the win. Now, bad news awaits me in the next match, as I'm playing the battler who I got the team from, Jocko Loco. Normally, once a team gets popularized, I do spend some time trying to figure out how I want to play out a mirror, but I haven't thought about it whatsoever for this team. I decide to save a bunch of Electrode energy, and I end up safe switching into the Tentacruel. I'm going to shield the Wild Charge, they're going to have to pivot out, but the moment I end up shielding a Swift Bait, I feel the game start to get off the rails. This game has not been going on for very long, but I already feel like I'm in trouble because I'm down 2 shields. And he makes a very nice play as he chooses to bring in the Empoleon. Empoleon is going to be a nice damage sponge, able to absorb the payback no problem. My switch timer, unfortunately, was just not up to catch that Drill Peck, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to take some pretty significant damage. However, the timer is up now, so I'm able to save a ton of energy on Tentacruel and get a catch onto Empoleon. I was able to catch the Drill Peck, and Drill Peck is going to be obviously less efficient than going for the Hydro Cannon, but he's able to rebank a Hydro Cannon and now send in Tentacruel. In this mirror match, I really feel like switching out ended up backfiring on me in a pretty spectacular manner. I'm getting close to the back-to-back Drill Pecks, but unfortunately, I am still 2 away. Drill Peck will land, getting them low. My opponent will fire off energy, and unfortunately, I don't think I'm surviving this payback. They go for the payback, it KOs the Empoleon, and unfortunately, I really feel like I completely threw away this game. I did not have a good understanding of how to play the mirror, and unfortunately, it came back to bite me in the worst way. I still have a ton of energy on my Electrode, but unfortunately, I think I'm in a really bad spot. I bring in my Electrode, I throw a Thunder Shock, and I lose charge attack priority, but honestly, even if I had thrown the Swift immediately, it's still not a win because my opponent has a move banked on Empoleon, and Empoleon wins charge attack priority. So back in comes the Empoleon, they're going to be winning that CMP tie, and GG's to Jocko. Clearly what I tried in the mirror did not work whatsoever, and I think next time I would probably want to get the Hisuian Electrode lower before I bring in the Tentacruel. We pick up a very bad lead in the final match, Hisuian Electrode into Shadow Amoonguss. I throw 2 Thunder Shocks, save switch into the Tentacruel, and by throwing 2 Thunder Shocks and switching, I deferred the second Astonish, so that damage landed on the Tentacruel instead of landing on the Electrode. My opponent chips me with a foul play, sends in Lapras, and this is where things could get quite bad. Because Lapras has massive Psy-Wave pressure, and it looks like Lapras is going to get the full farm down. I don't get the Scald, and this Lapras is loaded. Lapras energy is deadly onto Electrode. I try for the Ice Beam catch, but my opponent is just simply too patient. They hold their energy. They're still switch locked here, so they will be forced to fire off the Sparkling Aria. Switch timer's up, and they send in Shadow Amoonguss. I'm very happy they brought in the Amoonguss here, because obviously Amoonguss, not a great matchup for my Hisuian Electrode. I'm going to fire off the back-to-back Drill Packs. I was a little worried they would try and undertap the foul play here, so I just wanted to ensure that I could get both shields. My opponent will fire off a foul play of their own, but I think I just have to sack this, and this game is going to be won or lost on the back of Electrode. I'm going to have to start shielding. They are not in a range where I can knock them out with a Swift, but they might be getting closer and closer to Wild Charge range. However, I can't afford to debuff my defense. I don't know what they have in the back. So I fire off the Swift. I'm going to look to throw 4 in the move and ensure that I see the Astonish start to make sure my opponent does not get the catch. That Swift will knock out the Amoonguss. Their final Pokemon is a Tentacruel, and with the Amoonguss out of the way, they are so weak to Electric. I overfarm to put myself 2 Thunder Shocks off the back-to-back. Wild Charge picks up the one-hit KO. Back in comes the Lapras, and they can't get their double up. Wild Charge knocks out the Lapras, and even against bad leads, this team just finds a way. And I did want to include the footage at the end of me claiming one of my 4-4-1 sets to make it to veteran rank 25-32. The first time I tried out the Spring Cup, which was on the first day of the Cup, I was honestly very unimpressed. I felt like there wasn't a lot of flexible play, and a lot of the time, games were more decided on alignment rather than skillful play. However, I felt like this team today did a really nice job of kind of cutting through a lot of that RPS, even with bad leads, like leading into something like a Gorggeist, or in the final game, leading into the Shadow Amoonguss. The team was still able to claw its way back and get wins. Hisuian Electrode, even in matchups where Electric is resisted, if you're able to use teamwork to get some chip damage onto those Mons, then Wild Charge can genuinely be very threatening. And I really liked Tentacruel as a safe swap. Tentacruel to me kind of feels like the premier safe swap of this format, as its energy is very difficult to wall, and if you are something that walls the energy, like a Greninja or a Samurott, then you don't have a very high stat product, so Tentacruel still does fine there. So I'm a really big fan of this team. Massive congratulations to Jocko for hitting veteran with it so early, and I'm very happy that I was able to pull off such an incredible run with the team. 16-4, I wanted to try and do more sets, but unfortunately once I hit 25-62 elo, I ended up queuing and just couldn't really find any opponents. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for the next few days, because being at this level of queue times kind of makes streaming difficult, so I guess I'll probably look to viewer submissions for the next few days for videos. But all in all, this team, it was pretty incredible. Give it a try. I think you'll be very happy with the results. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed watching it, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provided to the channel is so sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much, and until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.